The Titans are under pressure.
Yeah.
When you're doing things and they're not working, then sometimes things need to change. It's a two-way street here. It's up to Dave as well to get his attitude right. So he's giving his team the best chance of winning football games every week.
Well, thanks for joining us once again. This week's episode of Queenslander. We're on a bit of a come down from Magic Round at Suncorp Stadium. All the action was here in Brisbane. Guys, probably a good idea it was a public holiday on that Monday based on some of the scenes we saw there at Suncorp Stadium.
Yeah, there would have been some sore heads.
Yeah.
No, but it was great. Great. Well, the women's origin was on Thursday night, so for those that got in early, they would have had 4 days of footy, but also 4 days of festivities. So great for the game, great event for the city, and I'm sure there's a lot of groups that have made some good memories, if you can remember them.
Yeah. We've got people, of course, all over the country that love coming here. Once upon a time, they used to say you'd never go to Brisbane, never go to that place. The matches that have been on show over the last couple of years tend to indicate that that's no longer the case. It's the place to come if you want to see 8 great games.
Yeah, I was driving through the CBD on Friday afternoon. It was great to see the walls of people just in different jerseys. That's the best thing. Usually, like maybe it's a Broncos Bulldogs game, you'll see those jerseys, but I even saw a Gold Coast Chargers jersey. Remember that?
Yeah.
Back in the day. I don't know what colour that was, the Gold Coast Chargers. It's hard to describe.
I saw a Crushers jersey. So, yeah, I think, and that's the unique part about it, is it's people coming to an event that's rugby league orientated, no matter where you come from, who you support, you're all there just to have fun together.
Yeah, just for a common cause.
Yeah, and some of the great vision tended to be the people sitting in the stands and seeing so many different jerseys all over the place, and it really has become an exciting situation.
What do you think was the match of the round? What was the most exciting one to watch? There was quite a few close games.
Well, how do you go past the last one? Storm.
Goes to Golden Point.
Golden Point. I mean, I just, Canberra keeps doing it, but I would say that was, I think we expected it to be close, but when Melbourne kicked out to a lead, I thought, they'll go on with this, but Canberra came back and Golden Point.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a bit of a Storm fan, so it didn't turn out to be my favourite game of the week, but gee, it was an impressive situation. They really had a dig, and it was, I think, the footy fans that were really welcomed.
And I loved even as a Cowboys supporter, the Cowboys lost on Saturday night. That was one of the matches of the round. Just to see the passion from the Warriors supporters in the crowd, given that Warriors were up against it that second half, you thought the Cowboys would probably win, but yeah, 2 entertaining teams there.
No, I think there was a lot of them that came over the ditch to support the Wars, and they're looking good.
I think Brisbane is still the best place. There's talk of moving it to different locations, but to me, it just works in Brisbane.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like, you play the grand final in Sydney. At the moment, I feel like Brisbane is home to the Magic Round. And I know that the NRL, they're going to make a commercial decision and maybe get some competitive tension against Brisbane, but yeah, I think that it's so positive, the outcome that you get over the 3 to 4 days that we have. Like, it'd be a challenge to change that.
Yeah.
And people will travel. I was talking to the Mad Butcher from New Zealand, Peter Leach, who comes over with a whole pile of people, and they say that it has risen to a level now that they just can't stay away from it. They love it being in Brisbane. He's very good. He doesn't like the people south of the border as much as we do. I think that we're going to see even more people from New Zealand turning up to Brisbane. Once again, they love the city.
Yeah, I think maybe New Zealand down the track's probably the only other place you could take it. But then you've got to look at the stadium size. You have smaller crowds. Yes, the atmosphere will be greater, but the NRL loses money because it's not in a 50,000-seat stadium there.
Well, I mean, that's the other part to this is it's probably the best rugby league stadium in the world. Yeah. Suncorp. Yeah.
Yep, and great job to all the ground staff. They're working around the clock. I heard one of the groundskeepers slept in his office after the State of Origin night, the first night, to get the field in tip-top shape. So good work to them. Not so much good work for the Titans at the moment. Lockie, David Fifita dropped. He played Queensland Cup. There was a TV game on 9 Now. If you want to watch the highlights, you can go back and, I don't know if you can call it highlights, for the Ipswich Jets, who got flogged 32-0. Fifita reports, Lockie, he got dropped because he asked to play on the left edge to switch sides because he's been playing right back row. What do you make of that?
Well, I think we're still speculating that that's the reason.
Yeah, Desi does a presser tomorrow, but who knows what Desi will say.
And I think David's been on record as saying the truth of why he was dropped will come out. So at this point in time, I think we're speculating. But, you know, if that is the case, look, at the end of the day, I think a coach and a player can have a conversation about their game and you know, and talk about where the coach might say, well, this is where we need to improve, or the player might say, well, you know, I agree, I need to do better here. In terms of changing positions on the field, it's probably uncommon that a player will request that. But to David's defence, he's played, even though he's a right-hand carry, left-hand fend, he actually plays better footy on the left than he does on the right. I think that's because he likes to get dropped under and move across the field from left to right. But you look at the Titans, and Both Moore is
killing it. He's probably their best player, him and Tino.
Yeah, on the left. So, look, again, we're speculating, but from David's perspective, no matter where you put him on the field, he can add value. I think he's just in a position now where he's got two options. He can either knuckle down, work hard, and fight his way back, and show us what he can do, or you know he can use this as a negative.
Yeah, you use the word conversation, Lockie, and I agree. I've written down communication. It's the absolute key, and it's very difficult to see why the coach and the player can't agree to a situation at hand. Look, we've seen him become one of the most powerful ball carriers in the game, but we haven't managed to see that consistently. I think the biggest issue is just getting some sort of understanding between player and coach, because if it's not there, well, it's going to be a long, hard season coming up.
Yeah, and how important, Lockie, is it for the Titans to sort that out between Hasler and Fifita, given that he's close to their highest paid player on nearly $1 million?
We don't. It needs to be sorted out, but in private.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to be the media speculating and it being playing out in the media, because it's a distraction for the rest of the playing group. So I'm sure, given the talk about it in the last few days, I'm sure the coach and the player will get together and resolve it as quick as they can.
Can you see a scenario where he maybe gets released by the Titans, given that he's on so much money?
Well, look, the Titans are under pressure.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you're doing things and they're not working, then sometimes things need to change. I'm not saying he could be released, but it's up to. I think it's a two-way street here. It's up to Dave as well to get his attitude right. So he's giving his team the best chance of winning football games every week, and I guess it's also from Desi's perspective to find out, what it is that Dave's got issues with and try and resolve them as quick as you can.
And to be honest, I probably thought that Desi was going to be quite successful as getting his star player to perform and work out what the issues were in his game that he was dealing with, and probably away from the game as well. So the cold hard facts are he's a massively high paid player, and to get the most out of him, I think there's got to be real understanding between the coach and the player, and just give a simple task to him every week.
I think the key, when you pay a player big money, it's obviously they bring something to the team, which is, they can do things that other players can't. But what you strive for in that position is consistency.
Yeah.
If you're going to be paid that sort of money every week, you need to be bringing something.
Yeah, it's not David Fifita's fault either that he's getting paid that money. The Titans chose to pay him,
correct.
but I can't think of another back rower in the NRL he would be the highest paid back rower in the NRL. Like, it's hard to think of someone who would be on similar money to him.
Yeah. And look, when he left the Broncos, he signed a mega deal.
Yeah.
He's had a reduced pay, like he's took a haircut on pay since his last deal.
Yeah.
But it's still big money. And I think we all know what Dave can bring, but I think everyone keeps saying, well, we need to see it every week.
Yep, that's it. Interesting to see if he continues on at the Ipswich Jets or is back at the Titans. Now, Origin, only a few weeks away now, while players have 2 more games to push their case for selection. Who do you think has a big opportunity to put themselves right in that frame?
Well, I've been trying to get an answer to this. Ask the selector. He'll come out with something. But I think it's going to sound like dodging the question, but there are a whole pile of players competing for positions in every position, and I think that's a wonderful thing for the selectors and the coach to be in that position. Certainly, they will guarantee that the players are performing their best to try and convince the selectors that they should be picked in that team.
Well, I think we spoke about Dave Fifita. I think the edge back rowers on the edge, getting some depth there is. Last year we had a lot of injuries. The middle of the field we were down on troops. So hopefully, Lindsay Collins, I think he's back soon. So we sort of Tino's back. So touch wood, they all stay healthy. But the middle of the field looks to have a bit more depth this year. But the edges are still. I still think there's people out there that can. We mentioned both for more. There's edge back rowers out there that are, I think, still vying for a position. Yeah,
Billy loves him too, and I guess that's what you need, a rock-solid defender in Origin like him.
Yeah, Origin's about attitude and it's about effort. And so if you've got those 2 things working for you, then Billy will see that and you'll be a good chance.
Well, put you on the spot, back rower you loved playing with in Origin. Who was so reliable that you'd line up and do all your tackles for you? Trying to be polite, but yeah. Who was a guy, you played for Queensland, that would always help you out?
Well, I hope he doesn't hear it. Fatty.
Oh, yeah, yep.
I loved Fatty, having him in the side. The conversations that we used to have, and he used to say it was the expectation that I had, what I believed that I needed him to do, wanted him to do. That was always fantastic to have that, and he wasn't a guy that did a lot of conversation on the field, although he used to demand it from...
He made up the field,
yeah, you're right there, Lockie, in the bar afterwards, and had the head wobble going as well as that. But I found him to be a guy that was you just could not replace him. He'd get a simple task done. If I needed the forwards to work in a little bit of a different way, I'd call on Fat, and if he couldn't do it himself, he'd be sort of instructing the players, and he became somebody that he didn't do a lot of talk on the field. That was a very strange part, I guess, for people to understand. But it didn't take him many words to convince those around him what was expected.
So I've got a question here, Walt, because I'm trying to remember. I was watching you as a young kid in the mid-'80s, but back then you'd have your winger, your centre, and you'd be 3 in, and then was it an edge back rower that would be inside you, or was it just...
Most of the time.
Most of the time,
right. And sometimes the halfback.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, we didn't play.
You'd play both sides of the field.
Yeah.
That was my next question, because it never used to be centre aside. Yeah. Centres were together.
Yeah.
So how did that work? So they went winger, and then the centres would defend together?
Usually, if they could. When it got to sort of the era of Gene Miles, Mal Meninga, they started to work. Mal started to work on getting back to the other side. That's the way that it was done in Sydney, whereas in Brisbane we didn't really sort of go to that plan all that often. But to have those two, and I used to love the opportunity playing at 5'8" to have those sort of guys. But Fatty was the guy that. The only thing that I used to find quite comical with Fat was that there wasn't a lot of talk went on, and I used to demand the talk for him. He said, "I've got no air left. I'm doing all of your work, the work that you should be doing." So he got the message across pretty quick.
Well, no disrespect to Fat, but if I looked up and I saw Mal Meninga, Gene Miles, Wally Lewis, Paul Horton, I know where I'm running.
Well, what about you, Lockie? Who was one of your favourites to line up alongside? Who would you always have a lot of trust in defending next to you?
Mate, without a doubt, my bodyguard, Tony Carroll.
Yeah.
He was. I used to just wind him up. So here comes this bloke. Yeah. He's going to run at me. He's going to try and run over the little bloke in the team. It's your just smash.
Stop him. Yeah.
Tunza.
He was
Tunza
good.
invariably would do. Like they'd come towards me, and then out of the corner of their eye, at the last minute, they could see him coming, and then next minute, as they were about to go straight onto me, I'd just see him go straight across in front of me. I'd give Tunza a pat on the back, and he'd just keep doing it for me.
Sometimes you'd get the best of both worlds because he'd play centre often too, so you'd have him next to you, and then you'd have a back row on the other side. So you got well and truly looked after there.
Yeah,
Or maybe that was the early days of you were still playing fullback.
No, well, fullback, but at the Broncos, Tunza, without a doubt, was and played a fair bit of Origin with him, and he was easy to wind up.
Yeah, yep.
But he was very strong, probably the strongest defender I've ever played with.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we always say Queenslanders pick and stick. Do you think there are any incumbents who have started to feel the pressure to perform? So I'm going to have a look at the team from Game 3 last year so we get it right. So fullback Reece Walsh, he's obviously out injured. Cobber was on one wing, Gagai in the centres with the hammer, Val Holmes on the other wing, Dearden and DC with the halves. Mo started with Harry Grant, Felice Kafusi, Ruben Cotter, Kurt Catewell and Carrigan was the lock. And on the bench, Ben Hunt, Lindsay Collins, Jeremiah Nene and Kalen Ponga. So which incumbents might be feeling pressure there? Like Felice Kafusi hasn't really played the past few weeks, and he was essentially, as he said, like we were short of middles. Kurt Catewell, similar sort of thing because the back row has been an area we've been short on. So
yeah, Ruben Cotter.
Ruben Cotter having to be versatile. Yeah, he's suspended for the next 2 weeks, but he'll be good to go for Origin.
Look, I don't. I mean, when you lose the previous series, I think you all feel a little bit of pressure, but it wasn't like we were embarrassed losing last year. I mean, it was a good win by New South Wales at Suncorp in Game 3. And I think it's at that point where, Billy be out there looking at other options in terms of, what's his depth like? Like there's definitely players there that are incumbent that are safe for their position, but he's also probably thinking, well, not just this game and this series, what's coming through next?
Sure. Yeah.
And so that'll bring up names that, you probably don't think they're ready, but he's got to start thinking about the next generation too.
Yeah, and DCE's confirmed, while that he's definitely wants to play Origin this year. Do you think a decision's already been made on that? Billy's thinking in his head, he's our 7 and he's our captain. Still, there's no need to change?
Yeah, I think so, mate. I think so. I think he's the man that will be in charge, leading the way for the guys, and the experience that he has on board just can't be replaced. They'll need him to lead and do it the best to the best of his ability. Certainly, when you're trying to get back on board and return to the winners list.
Yeah, agree with that. I get the sense maybe if they won last year, he might have retired, but it's still a bit of unfinished business.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think he missed out on the Australian team last year, so that probably has driven him a bit to want to, I guess, challenge himself at that level still in the Origin arena, because it is the toughest test as a player. But game managing halfbacks with good kicking game and calmness is, it's getting more and more rare in our game. So he's definitely got heaps to offer. Yeah,
wonderful organisation as well, and that can't be replaced.
And fullback, do you look at putting Hammer there, or is that strengthening a weakness to weaken a strength in the centres? Or if Ponga's fit, Ponga's probably a better option because Hammer's a solid centre?
I actually think, I just think that the next couple of weeks, there's probably positions in Billy's mind that are probably still up in the air, and he's got to. The next couple of weeks might determine who gets the nod on a few positions. Again, we mentioned the new generation coming through. Like, if you move Hammer, this hypothetical, if you moved Hammer, then who comes in the centre? Rob
Toya was excellent for the Roosters, big stage, Suncorp Stadium.
There's all these sort of conversations, but I'm pretty sure Bill is sort of comfortable where he's 17, 18 sits at the minute. But there might be some names sitting beside other names that, in the next couple of weeks they'll determine who's going to get it.
I think the only thing that'll move Hammer will be injury if he's not fit.
Yeah, exactly. He's been so reliable. For Queensland now, moving on to one of our favourite segments, the TAB Big Call, thanks to our supporting partner, TAB. this year. What are we thinking, fellas? I think
we
had a shocker last week.
We had a shocker.
Yeah.
Like I've said 3 out of the 4 Queensland teams were going to win at Magic Round. None of them won.
Nah.
So you know what? I'm going to double down. 4 Queensland teams to win this week. All of them to win.
There you go. So Dolphins play the Eels. You'll see that Thursday night footy. Broncos play the Rabbitohs Friday night footy against Uncle Wayne. How good will that be? Cowboys against the Panthers up in Townsville, and the Titans against the Knights. So
in Newcastle.
In Newcastle, I think.
Anyway, I'm doubling down.
Yeah.
I've got to make up for me.
Well, Adam, this is going to upset you, but I think that it'll be the 3 out of the 4.
Panthers
Cowboys,
back.
Yeah. The Panthers. Watching them on the weekend across the ditch, it was impossible not to be impressed, and they did appear as though they've taught themselves a lesson, and their recovery is just starting.
Yeah, and missing Ruben Cotter is going to make it even more difficult for North Queensland, although they did upset the Panthers down in Sydney earlier this year. So you've outdone me, Lockie. My big call was the Titans to actually win a game. So you've actually gone further than that. So, okay, I'm going to back Titans to win.
It's an all or nothing. It's all or nothing for me.
Titans to win and Loffy to score a double in that game. So that's
who to score a double?
Loffy Pereira.
Oh, right, okay.
So that's as good as I'm going to do with the Titans at the moment, because I ain't too confident about what they're tossing up at the moment. But just moving along now to the Broncos, Lockie, they had that loss against the Panthers. Michael Maguire said he learnt a lot about his side in that game. What do you think he might have learnt?
When that game was in a real arm wrestle in the first half, and it was Origin-like.
Yeah.
Because it was ball in play for long periods of time, 2 half-backs going at it, 2 forward packs going at it. And in the end, the crack, Adam Reynolds went for the 40-20, put it out in the full. That sort of was a bit of a...
And then Qlder kicks a 40-20.
Yeah. That was that's where the game changed. But I reckon, and also I think Paddy and Payne, who normally get through 40 okay, at the back end of that first half, they were cooked. And so it just tells you there was a high quality game, which is probably Madge is saying that's what a semi-final would be like.
Yeah, okay, yep.
And that's what it felt like watching it.
Yeah.
And he probably learned a bit about his players, about who can go with that, and who can't. Well, not so much who can't, but he talked about his.
Yeah.
I think he talked about his interchange rotation and stuff. So probably learned a bit out of that.
Yeah, and I think it was such a wonderful game. They just really made it difficult on the opposition, for vast periods of time. And I think it was that game that if the Panthers had lost it, I would have been probably stupid enough to say that I don't think that they're going to be there at Premiership's end. I think that they probably would have fallen over and not been able to recover. They got there, and I think they regained a fair bit of self-belief, which hasn't exactly been there in spades throughout the course of this year.
Yeah, I think that result made the rest of the competition nervous, fearing that the Panthers are getting back.
Well, it was like they were waiting for a challenge.
Yeah.
They needed a challenge, and that was the perfect. There was talk about Cleary maybe not being the New South Wales half.
Yeah.
And everyone's saying the Broncos should belt Penrith.
Yeah.
It's just like, righto, there's a red flag to a bull, here we go.
Yeah. And, I think that another thing that really stood out, Lockie, was when things went well for them and they managed to pick up a try. All teams celebrate when they achieve success, when they come up with something great in a game. The way that they carried on, it was almost like a grand final.
Yeah.
They were thinking, we've managed to achieve this, and they got there. Success is very difficult at different stages to deal with, but the way that they were, how impressed they were with it in their own form, really was quite impressive, and the self-belief returned to an all-time high.
And speaking of grand finals, what about that try from Nathan Cleary? A bit of PTSD from the Broncos. It was almost exactly the same as that grand final try.
Yeah, no, when he went over, I thought the same thing, and Joey called it on commentary as well. But I could see on the sideline Paddy and Payne were starting to really fatigue. And I think Cleary saw that.
Yeah.
He started running a lot more late in the half. He ran in that set when he scored that try. He'd run earlier in the tackle count. I think he was targeting those big boys that were tired. And then look, the Broncos players, I think Tony was a marker, and he ran hard to get back to his position, but it just left this gaping hole behind the play the ball, and the big boys were just a bit, they were a bit done and they couldn't move.
No, I hate to pee in your pocket here, Lockie, but it really was a performance very similar to you when you knew that those around you needed you to be inspirational, need to lead the way. And the way that they performed, the Panthers, after seeing Cleary's performance was super impressive, and the way that they were all prepared at that stage after watching him to chip in and do their work as well. It was, I think that was a very good thing for Penrith supporters, but in particular the coach who certainly did manage to breathe a little easier.
Yeah, pretty sure that was the first day game for the Broncos too. So as you mentioned, like learning experiences, players fatigue more. Obviously, it was a hot sunny day in Brisbane compared to the Broncos traditionally play night games.
Yeah, yeah, and you look, they had a 10-day turnaround in the Bronx.
They did too, yeah. Sunday, yeah.
Turnaround.
Sometimes, game, yeah.
Sometimes
it has the adverse effect.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Broncos, they've just informed us too, before the announcement of their team, they've let us know that Ezra Mam won't be playing this week. He'll spend at least this week in the Queensland Cup to get a bit of fitness back in after serving that NRL enforced suspension. Well, do you think that's a good idea? Instead of rushing him straight back into the NRL, maybe ease him in a bit?
Well, the coach knows what he wants to see happen out there. He has a lot more conversations, a lot more understanding with Ezra. I guess that only he could answer that question. You're going to get half and half there. Half the fans saying, no, we've lost. We need to have a win. Put him back in. He's the guy that we need. Others going the other way. So I guess that's a really hard one to pick. But if they feel comfortable without him, why not?
Yeah, yep.
Well, I'm pretty sure I was doing the maths. He's pretty much nearly 9 months since he's played.
Yeah, since August last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that, you know, it's not about his talent. This is just he needs to go and find a bit of contact, a bit of match fitness.
Yeah.
Still a very good competition. So he had a plan, Madge, and I think he's sticking to it regardless of what happened last week. You know? So I think he's sticking to his plan and giving Ezra a bit of a couple of weeks just to find his feet, get his timing right. And I reckon there'd be a game, I don't know, maybe in a couple of weeks that, you know, he's probably told Ezra that's when you're making your comeback. Yeah.
And I guess in a way too, it makes him re-earn his position, knowing, OK, I've served this suspension, I just don't walk straight into the team also. It has that double effect. He's got to earn his position back.
I think that's part of it, but like I said, he hasn't played for 9 months.
Yeah. And he didn't play any trials, obviously, I mean,
some of the best ever players probably after 9 months still probably need to go and find some sort of way of getting some timing and match fitness back.
Yeah.
And for a lot of others, you know, you could liken it almost to a guy coming back from a knee reconstruction. Hasn't managed to play for 9 months and now he's getting the chance to do so. A big challenge, and I think that, he'll make the most of it, and we all hope that we get to see him when he does return to the Broncos side, producing his best and having that little bit of ease in the tension level.
Yeah, we're pretty sure he'll play for the South Logan Magpies. It'll be Sunday afternoon at Davies Park against the Western Clydesdales. Ironically, who's been playing 6, Lockie, for the South Logan Magpies?
Anthony Milford.
Our old mate from the Broncos.
From the Bronx, Milf.
Sliding doors moment.
It'll be interesting to see, because Carmichael Hunt is the coach of the Magpies with assistants Lottie Takiri and Justin Hodges.
Yeah.
Blast from the past there, just a real Broncos sort of feel to it. Because Milford would have played with Hodjo. Wouldn't have played with Lottie, and I don't think he would have played with Carmichael. But anyway, Ezra's in good hands.
Yeah, so if you're a Broncos fan, head down to Davies Park on Sunday afternoon. There should be a big crowd. Just the last one on Ezra Mam for both of you guys. When he does come back into the NRL squad, is he straight 6, or do you put him on the bench maybe as the 14, have a super sub, or then shift Hunt to hooker and then get him in, balancing act-wise?
I think you probably just wait a couple of weeks to see how he's going. I think we saw an insight a little bit to it late in the game the other day. Madge put Hunt into hooker.
Yeah.
And put Billy Walters into the halves.
Yeah.
So Billy can cover halves and hooker like Ben can. But it's interesting to see where that'll finally settle.
Yeah, and also with that hooker position, one of those hookers will fall out. Obviously, Corey Paix started the year, but he's back on the bench. Let's move along with our Queensland teams. The Broncos are the only ones in the top 8 at the moment. Cowboys just out, and the Dolphins and Titans a little bit further down the ladder. Which one of those 3 do you think most likely plays in the finals this year?
Which of those do you think most likely?
Out of Cowboys, Dolphins, Titans, if you had to pick one to play in the finals, I'm not answering that question because it's Cowboys 100% out of that.
Well, this, like your perception or your opinion changes regularly. You know, I mean, they all got beat on the weekend.
Yeah.
You know, the Broncos that was a poor performance. Dolphins wasn't very. Titans was poor. Cowboys was okay. They're pretty good. So. Look, I'm always going to say the Broncos will play.
So besides the Broncos. So we'll say the Broncos. We'll give the Broncos a pass mark. They're in the 8 at the moment. So out of those 3, if you had to pick one.
At this stage, Cows. But if you had asked me the week before, I would have said Dolphins. But, probably the Cows.
I go the Cows too. I think that they've got some improving to do. And I think that won't be that far away. I think they'll put it together pretty quick.
Yeah, I think they're just going to regret a few games back end of the year, the Dolphins. Like, they've been so close in a couple of games that they've just blown.
I reckon that Josh Kerr, I'd almost start him.
He brings so much energy.
Yeah, I just reckon they lacked a bit of size and a bit of go forward early in that game. Have you picked your 3 Cowboy players yet?
Favourite Cowboys players? We actually did some interviews with Cowboys players when they were staying at Brisbane for Magic. I do love Tom Dearden. You notice every time the Cowboys make a break, you see his blonde hair flashing in the corner. I mentioned that to him. He's a bit dirty because one of his fitness records got done by one of the young development players I was talking to him about. So they had the 1.2 kilometre time trial, as you guys would have done. And Zach Hertigan, who played halfback for the Pride in that upset over David Fifita's Ipswich Jets, he beat it by a second.
Yeah, right.
So Tommy knows that he's got another year before he can do that again. But also, Jackson Purdue, how can you not like him?
No, he's a good kid, good person, good kid.
I was talking to him about bulking up. He said he doesn't mind the sneaky KFC meal to try and boost his side. So,
well, he's another one. You know, you talk about moving hammer or not having a cent. Like he's starting to get in that sort of frame.
Yeah, I think you'll find him playing the halves during Origin if, fingers crossed, Tom Dearden's part of the Queensland system.
Yeah, right.
I think they'll give Jackson Purdue a couple of games. So that gives me 2.
We'll give you another week.
It'll have to be a forward. I have to be fair to the forward. So I'll go research, and whichever Cowboys player stands out in that Panthers match, we can do that. Not that my opinion counts much next to 2 legends of the game, and Wally Lewis and Darren Lockyer. We'll have it all on Wide World of Sports this weekend. Back-to-back games Thursday night. Dolphins up against the Eels and the Broncos up against the Bunnies. Adam Reynolds and Wayne Bennett up against their former clubs. You'll catch it live and free on 9 this weekend.